If you're watching this channel, it's because you don't enjoy watching the world squander what Christendom built, but you want to do your part. And chances are you've heard me mention a great means by doing just that. Email made by and for Catholics. Check out fidei.email. That's FIDEI.email. Built for Catholic individuals, families, organizations, and groups. They're private, secure, and of course, they're Catholic. And they're offering 2 months off on your first year for an annual subscription if you enter the coupon code Return to Tradition without spaces. That's the name of this channel, without spaces, at checkout. One of the underreported stories was at the Synod recently, there was a meeting, a very quiet meeting, but it wasn't secret. It was reported in the mainstream media, but the details of which were not reported at the time. And that meeting was between Pope Francis, Cardinal Cupich, Cardinal Tobin, and Cardinal McElroy, all of the United States. And it was ominous in nature. I even called my live stream that touched on it an ominous meeting. We now have the details of that meeting because at the time, there were no details. Nobody was saying what was going on. But now we have details of that meeting, and to call it ominous is now an understatement. The future of the church in America is at stake. I know that sounds dramatic, but those 3 cardinals are the biggest allies of Pope Francis in the American episcopate. They always side with him on the big debates among the bishops and cardinals of the United States. They speak for Francis. They align with him 100% of the time on every single issue. They repeat all the most notorious heresies promoted by Jesuits and Cardinal Bernardin and the rest, going back decades. They are Francis's voice among the bishops of the church. And our report comes from a source who is bragging about this. So we go to the National Catholic Reporter for this headline. This is likely what 3 U.S. cardinals discussed with Pope Francis. Get ready to have the church in America remade if Francis has his way. There is a rather large number of openings of bishops in the United States, relatively speaking, and several bishops and cardinals who are past retirement age who still have their offices because they have had a hard time finding men to fill those sees with. I guarantee you now that Cupich, Tobin, and McElroy all have names ready to go of men who are already bishops who can get promoted to fill those sees. And I'll explain the process here for you in a moment. Here are the initial details from the article. Quote, 3 U.S. cardinals met with Pope Francis the morning of October 10th. Cardinal Joseph Tobin of Newark said they addressed challenges in the United States. Unless it was a 14-hour meeting, which it was not, how did they select which challenges to address? Joining Tobin were Chicago Cardinal Blaise Cupich and San Diego Cardinal Robert McElroy. Together, the trio composed Team Francis in the United States. As close advisors to the Pope, they keep their counsel. Yet the meeting was not a secret, and the public nature of the meeting sent a message. It was held in the Apostolic Palace and placed on the Pope's public schedule of meetings, not held privately at the Domus Sancta Marta, where the Pope lives and hosts meetings he does not want made public. The Vatican released a photo of the meeting. Lacking inside information on the private meeting, the most likely challenge at the top of the list was the need to fill the many vacancies in the nation's dioceses, especially in the metropolitan archdioceses. As of today, 8 archdioceses are led by bishops past the retirement age of 75, with another 6 crossing that threshold next year. The Pope has the chance to alter the trajectory of the U.S. hierarchy, one that has been uniquely resistant to this Holy Father's agenda, as witnessed by the large number of bishops who publicly issued statements of support for then Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano when he had tried to effect a push against Pope Francis in 2018. End quote. That report is unfortunately likely to be accurate. The U.S. episcopate has been seen as very conservative and a roadblock to Francis's program, as well as a roadblock to that of his secular allies. And something must be done about that problem. And this is his perfect opportunity. And one of the things they won't mention here is there are several dioceses in the United States as well who have a neighboring bishop governing them. The most obvious one is the Diocese of Tyler, Texas, where Bishop Strickland was canceled for saying Catholic things and teaching Catholicism in the face of increasing heresy from Rome. There are a lot of dioceses with openings, And I guarantee you those men who met with Francis, Supich, Tobin, and McElroy all have names of men ready to go. What is going to happen here is a shuffling of bishops. You will have cardinals who will be retiring soon. Supich is one of them. He's 75. He turned 75 in March. It means that his time running the Archdiocese of Chicago is coming to a close. At some point in the next couple of years, he will probably not be the archbishop there anymore. But you will have a shuffling of bishops from normal dioceses. Their favorite bishops will get promoted to the largest metropolitan dioceses with openings. And from there, you will then get auxiliary bishops who will be made normal bishops in the now vacant regular dioceses. And then you will have their favorite priests who get made auxiliary bishops. That is how this is going to work. That is how it always works. This is a potential seismic change in the church that you will probably see happen in the next 12 months. Anyone who gets a promotion, anyone who becomes a bishop or an archbishop at this stage should be viewed with at least some skepticism. And yes, that includes the new bishops in Boston and elsewhere, because the American episcopate has been seen as a thorn in the side of Pope Francis and his program, as well as the program of the secular authorities. If you don't believe me, look how it's projected Catholics are going to cast their lots in the coming November contest. When you look at that breakdown and you see the trend line on that, the secular authorities are just as worried as Francis is and as the bishops are about what the direction of the church in America is, because the bishops have a great deal of authority and influence on that. But here are the names. Note the reasoning with some of these, which includes crushing the budding resurgence of traditionally minded seminarians and priests in the seminaries. This is something that worries them very greatly, that their post-conciliar revolution in the church may come crumbling down because seminarians, and for the last 10 years, priests coming out of the seminaries are increasingly conservative. There's been no Francis effect other than maybe to inspire traditionally minded men to become Catholic priests, which is the opposite of what they want. Back to the article. Quote, "The top of the author of this article's list for replacement is Archbishop Alan Vigneron of Detroit, who hit the retirement age of 75 a year ago. His successor will need to confront the hotbed of anti-Francis sentiment that is Sacred Heart Seminary. The new archbishop in Motor City will need to rebuild the morale of the clergy as well. Next up is the relatively small Archdiocese of Kansas City, Kansas. The urgency here is that incumbent Archbishop Joseph Naumann embodies precisely the kind of culture warrior style that is the antithesis of the pastoral approach Pope Francis has proposed. He continues to advocate the shuttering of the U.S. Church's anti-poverty program, the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, even though the U.S. bishops reiterated their strong support for the program at their June meeting. Naumann also was one of those who, when confronted with Vigano's tendacious letter in 2018, issued a statement calling the former nuncio a, quote, man of integrity. He couldn't muster a kind word for the object of Vigano's attacks, Pope Francis. And if you hadn't noticed, Naumann was one of the leaders of the bishop's anti-Moloch efforts, which they have managed to drive into the ditch. Houston Cardinal Daniel DiNardo turned 75 this year, and his health has not been great since he suffered a stroke in 2019. As president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, DiNardo rudely responded to remarks from then Bishop Robert McElroy during the 2015 debate about faithful citizenship, the bishop's quadrennial document on casting your lot. McElroy pointed out that the difficulties of the text in a thoughtful way, and DiNardo dismissed his comments as rhetorical flourishes. The remark drew gasps in the room where even heated exchanges are free from that kind of derisiveness. Other challenges are not so pressing. Archbishop Dennis Schnurr in Cincinnati turned 75 last year. Archbishop Thomas Rhodey of Mobile, Alabama, hit the retirement age this year, as did Omaha's Archbishop George Lucas. These men keep a relatively low profile, avoiding the kind of vitriol some of their confreres spout. If they stay on a few more years, it would not be a problem. One prelate over 75 who has been a steadfast supporter of Pope Francis is Washington, D.C. Cardinal Wilton Gregory. He will turn 77 in December, but his health has been uneven, and sources tell me the process of selecting his successor has begun. End quote. A lot of that is secular politics. Go back to what he was talking about with Daniel DiNardo in 2015. Cardinal McElroy was basically telling people to downplay the sacrifice to Moloch and let Catholics cast their lot for the donkey who wants unrestricted access to the sacrament of Satan. And he used poetic language and rhetorical flourishes to do it. That is what this is. And these people have long memories. 2015, almost 10 years ago when they had that debate. And now he may pay the price for it. Now, Cardinal Cupich, I said, is over 75. My suspicion is Cardinal McElroy will become the new Cardinal Archbishop of Chicago. He's already a cardinal as it is. San Diego is not even an archdiocese. It's a regular diocese. So that's why he'll probably get moved. He is a Francis loyalist, and Chicago is one of the most important sees in the United States, probably right after Baltimore, which is historically the first see of the United States. Now, the rest of that article goes into secular politics, talks about the coming November contest, what the consequences will be if the once and future president does actually reemerge victorious. We'll find out together here very soon on that score. But the whole thing was framed in politics. And that's telling. That's the tell on what this is. They don't care that much about the faith. If they did, they wouldn't actually be focusing on the political and bringing it all that much into this. But I'm curious, what do you have to say about this article? Are you surprised that they were being that blunt, that forceful, that honest about what they hope this meeting was about? And I suspect they're right. I strongly suspect that they're right, because it's the only thing that makes sense. Why meet with 3 American cardinals, publicly yet privately, without telling anybody what it was about, but the 3 closest American cardinal allies to Pope Francis? They weren't just sitting there having tea. I guarantee you that. Let me know what you think about this in the comments, please. Hey, like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly helps. So does sharing this on social media. That helps too. And, as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.